Yusuf ibn Tashfin had received the envoys from Spain and gotten the call for help. After conferring with his senior advisors, as per the Sunnah of the Prophet, he starts preparing his armies in the city of Ceuta and sent an envoy to the Emir of Sevilla, al-Mutamid, to ask him to prepare Algeciras, also known as Algeciras, for him and his troops. Interestingly, it seems the communication between the envoys from Yusuf and the ones from the Emir was difficult as they struggled to understand each other. The Berbers were straight shooters, while the Emirs were used to a more politically charged language that they learned dealing with the Christians. It appears that for some time Al-Mu'tamid tried to play the Almoravid card to Alfonso VI as a threat to get from the Christians what he wanted, while not giving away anything to Yusuf. But Yusuf was not one to entertain this political game of thrones. He knew Alfonso was currently sieging Zaragoza, while Tortosa and Valencia were also under attack. His decision is taken. Along with his troops, he would cross the Strait of Gibraltar with no further delay. The crossing of this road was not without any problem. The sea was very agitated, so much so that Yusuf thought they would not leave to fight the Christians in Spain. Yusuf then famously raised his hands in the sky and supplicated his Lord. اللهم إن كنت تعلم أن في جواز هذا خيرا وصلاحا للمسلمين فسهل علي جواز هذا البحر وإن كان غير ذلك فصعبه علي حتى لا أجوزه. The storm that was raging until then immediately started to calm down. Yusuf took this as a direct response to his supplication and glad tidings for what was to come. Despite the early frictions between the two parties, Yusuf was greatly welcomed by Al-Mu'tamid. His arrival boosted morale of the local Andalusians as they were bracing for battle. They expressed overwhelmingly their relief at the prospect that Yusuf brought with him, a prospect of union of all Muslims under one banner and an end to the division Islamic Spain suffered from for so long. Al-Mu'tamid, thinking that Yusuf and his armies could use a little rest from the travel, invites them over to Sevilla. But Yusuf rebuked him strongly. This was a slap in the face to Al-Mu'tamid. He had rarely seen such steadfastness and iman coming from a fellow Muslim. Few would refuse an invitation to the luxurious palaces of Sevilla. Additionally, Yusuf was over 70 years old at the time and had just accomplished quite a dangerous and tiresome trip. This exemplary behavior alone granted him immediate legitimacy in the eyes of the Andalusians as the undisputed leader of the Muslims. As a result, all emirs joined forces under Yusuf's lead. Al-Mu'tamid from Seville was the first to join, followed by the emir of Almeria, then Abdullah ibn Burqin, the emir of Granada, then his brother Tamim, the emir of Malaga. The troops departed and headed towards Badajoz, where they were welcomed by Al-Mutawakkil Amr ibn Aftas. They kept going north to the borders of current-day Portugal, until they reached a plain that would be remembered as the plain of Zallaqa. In that plain would the Muslim Taifa unite for the first time since the fall of the Umayyads, which at the time seemed quite the miracle. The different sources we have on the battle differed when it comes to the number of participants. A first source states 24,000 Andalusians and 24,000 Almoravids. A second source mentions that Yusuf crossed the Strait of Gibraltar with 7,000 men, to what we can add another 20,000 men from Al-Andalus. Ibn Kardabus, in his Tarikh al-Andalus, mentions 20,000 Almoravids. So we can deduce from these sources that the Muslims in total were at least 20,000 and at most 45,000. However, all sources agree that the Muslims had fewer troops than the Christians. Before the fight, a couple of interesting events are happening. The first one is when Yusuf sent, in accordance to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, a letter to Alfonso giving him one of three options: convert to Islam, pay the jizya, or war, which Alfonso understandably refused. On the other hand, multiple sources mention that Alfonso sent an envoy to Yusuf ibn Tashfin on a Thursday, which said the following, quote, "Tomorrow is Friday and is your holiday. Saturday is the Sabbath of the Jews, and Sunday is our holiday. Let us meet on the battlefield on Monday." The Muslims understand this to be a blatant trick, and they get ready to fight on Friday. Indeed, on Friday early morning around Fajr prayer, the Christians' armies were knocking at the door. The formation of the Muslim troops was as follows. The front line was led by Al-Mu'tamid with 10,000 troops on horseback. The right flank was led by Al-Mutawakkil Amr ibn al-Afdas. The left flank was composed of the eastern Andalusian troops. The reserves were led by Yusuf ibn Tashfin with a select few from the Almoravids and their own troops. On the other side, the Christians were split into 4 different groups: a front line, 2 wings, and a center of formation that was led by Alfonso himself. The battle starts. The Christians' heavily armored horsemen lead a strong charge into the Muslim front line. Al-Mutamid is injured. Alfonso leads another charge on the Almoravid regiment led by Dawood ibn Aisha. This last attack increases further the pressures on the forces of Al-Mutamid and Abu Dawood. When Yusuf hears of the news, he sends a regiment of strong Almoravid warriors led by Sir ibn Abu Bakr, which managed to relieve some of the pressure. Alfonso still manages to push all the way up to the Almoravid camp. At the site, the Christians were rejoicing. Meanwhile, Yusuf was preparing his next move that would turn the tides of the battle in favor of the Muslims. The reserve troops that Yusuf kept aside start walking to the rhythms of the drums and flanked the pushing Christians when they least expected it. This attack is devastating as the Almoravids sweep through the Christians, killing anyone on their path. The surviving Christians flee towards Alfonso, who orders them to stand their ground and fight. But the Christians are in a very unfavorable position and are forced to retreat with less than 1,000 men. One of Yusuf's men tracks Alfonso and manages to injure him on the calf, an injury that he would carry for the rest of his life. The Christians are routed and the Muslims are victorious. Later on, historians would compare this battle to the Battle of Yarmouk or the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah. Yusuf would have to go back prematurely to Morocco as he received news his son had died, which prevented the Almoravids from capitalizing on this battle further. Not only would Yusuf come back for more victories, but he would also take the entirety of Islamic Spain under his empire.